Thank you. Thank you, Karan. Thank you, Arun Puri, for inviting me again and again until I finally came. It's a pleasure to be here in my home city of Delhi, and it's great to be here, really. So, thank you for inviting me to speak on the subject of cinema as a global language. As a filmmaker, I make images in my work. I don't really pen words, and especially not words to be delivered from podiums as august as these. But I saw this as an opportunity to think aloud with you of late on what has been possessing my mind in this tumultuous time since the watershed date of 9/11/01. I feel that our world has never been less peaceful, more destructive, more commercial, less glorifying in risk and experiment. Because of this, I have been reflecting on the torrent of ceaseless images in our media, in our flooding our lives, in print, on television, and of course in our popular cinema, ultimately asking myself the age-old question that I began with when I was many years ago in Orissa as a young girl. Can art, what is the role of an artist in society? Can art really change the world? As an artist, I am aware now more than ever that a monologue is not the answer. One voice cannot represent all of humanity. There are multiple human imaginations. Those with a colonial mentality think of imaginative people amongst us as crazy. But not everyone marches on the same road, and not everyone is cast in the same image. I truly believe that only those who embrace the world fully will ultimately know themselves. There should be no borders within art. Rather, every artist should own all conventions. As artists, but also as civilians, our strongest weapon is freedom of speech, although this fundamental right is challenged by incidents in the world around us. As artists, we have an added responsibility to protest through our work. In the new global village of incessant images, increasingly, I see a failure of mass media to impart actual understanding. In this overactive pluralism that we see, it gives one the illusion of knowing a lot about a lot, but actually you know a smattering about nothing at all, leaving in its wake an audience so thoroughly bludgeoned by little bits of information that one is left confused and consequently apathetic politically. Right now, the schisms of the world are being cemented into huge walls between one belief and way of life and another. Now more than ever, we need cinema to reveal our tiny local worlds in all their glorious particularity. In my limited experience, it's when I've made a film that's done full-blown justice to the truths and idiosyncrasies of the specifically local that it crosses over to become surprisingly universal. Take Monsoon Wedding, for instance. I wanted to make an intimate family flick, something out of nothing, a love song to this great city of Delhi, where I come from, to return to my old habits of guerrilla filmmaking, except this time, fired by the recent empowering of the dogma method, I wanted to make a film in just 30 days, in $1 million, which was roughly the budget of Salam Bombay many years ago, and that was the original premise, to prove to myself that I didn't need the juggernaut of millions of dollars, of studios, of special effects, and plenty of men in suits to make a good story in the most interesting visual way possible. I wanted to capture, first and foremost, the spirit of masti inherent in the full-bodied Punjabi community from where I come, and then to capture the India, which we know lives in several centuries at the same time. Such was the India I know and live in, the fluid pillars of which I wanted to put on film, 68 actors, 140 scenes, and one hot monsoon season later, using paintings, jewelry, saris, furniture, and even my family members, because they worked for free as actors, with each member of my family acting in it after shooting in exactly 30 days, a film was born that then had a journey so different from any expectation, or more correctly, non-expectation, that we might have had for it during its making. People from New Delhi to Iceland to Hungary to Brazil to America believed it was their wedding, their family, themselves on screen. And if they didn't have a family, they yearned to belong to a madcap Punjabi family like the one they saw. I didn't make the film to educate anybody about my culture and my people. I believe that to be simply a cultural ambassador of one's country is boring. I leave that really to the diplomats. But rather, if it was made for anybody beyond myself, it was made for the people of Delhi to feel and laugh and cry at our own flawed Punjabi selves. The film was released soon after 9/11, and in those demonizing months, especially in New York City where I live, it's an international city, but in those months after 9/11, people who looked like me, people who looked like us were suddenly the other. I remember film critics seeing this film actually on the day that it was 9/11, and they went into the theater and they came out dancing, and suddenly the planes had hit and the world had changed, and suddenly we became the other. But when this film was released, it provoked such a dialogue and such a commonality of understanding that it made me ask, what can art do? Art basically increases communication, and violence negates communication. But can art also show us our dark side? What is our responsibility in making art? I believe so much there is not just one truth, the one truth, unless someone wants to make a divine claim, but there are so many truths. It depends on who's doing the looking and from where. My new film, The Namesake, is my most personal film yet. It opened in the US 3 weeks ago and here in India just yesterday. And for me, this film was inspired by grief. I had lost a beloved without warning, and as is our custom, we had to bury her the next day in a bitterly cold field under jet-strewn skies near the Newark airport. This was my Ami, my mother-in-law, who had spent her entire life in the red earth of East Africa, who was now being laid to rest under the icy glare of snow, very far from what she and we, her family, had known of as home. In the weeks of mourning that followed, I found myself on a plane reading Jhumpa Lahiri's book, The Namesake. It was such a shock of recognition while reading this book because Jhumpa had understood so clearly and acutely what it felt like to bury a parent in a country that is not ours. And the book became such a comfort, a solace, and I tried making sense of this loss and found expression in this film. The Namesake took readers through a world of crisscrossings achingly familiar to me. It was many of my worlds, the Calcutta I had left behind as a teenager, the Cambridge where I went to college, and the New York where I now live. Though I share this particular personal journey with the Ganguly family, my aim was not only to make a film about being Bengali or about being Indian in America. This was a film that represented the state of being of many of us who live between worlds and the constant comings and goings that make an immigrant. I shot New York City and Calcutta as if they were one city. The textures and graffiti, the salam to both politics and art, these were the gods of both cities. In both, you have the frayed and layered posters on the lampposts and walls, scaffoldings of steel in one, of bamboo in the other. I began to see that the film would be about crossings and movement. The bridges, the trains, the airplanes, the neutered spaces of airports, these would be the threads of the film, uniting the tapestry that covered 30 years in the family's life between New York and Calcutta. The massive steel of the Howrah Bridge, like an iconic sash across the Ganges, was echoed in the light grace of the George Washington Bridge across the Hudson River. I scouted a hospital on Roosevelt Island and felt that it easily might have been in Calcutta. Ashima Ganguly, played by the great Tabu in the film, could give birth to her son Gogol here, I thought. She could look out of the window, and in the girders of the Queensboro Bridge, the shake and hum of traffic would lay the ghost of the Howrah. This duplicity of worlds is something I know well. Because of this, I feel that in the creative realm, borders and bridges alike need to be fluid and porous. Talent knows no borders and no geography. I try to tell stories in which people can see themselves, not just some people, but all people, not just in some places, but everywhere. It takes courage to be original, especially for those who have been told for the past few centuries that the West is the mirror in which they can see their future. I am thrilled to tell you, like Karan stole my line, he said, I'm thrilled to tell you that The Namesake is actually astounding the filmy pundits with its huge box office. It's in the top 20 and so on. And my own nickname, the film is all about nicknames, my own nickname was Pugly. And the Pugly in me keeps saying to my mother, look ma, no Goras in this picture. It's a Bengali film made in Kolkata and New York, but at its core, it's a story as ancient as the hills, a story of parents and children, of growing up and loss, a story of the unbroken line of our families. Now, after years of making epics on peanuts, I'm honored to say that I will be making an epic on a peanut plantation, multi-million dollars here, for Shantaram, the first probably overtly global film to be made, uniting two of the world's stratospheric actors, Amitabh Bachchan and Johnny Depp, in the same frame. I am so excited about that. Based on the hallucinatory tale by Gregory Roberts, Shantaram brings together so many themes of my work. Can a foreigner ever become a native? Who determines who is the outsider? Yes, the world has undeniably become smaller and more global, but we must warn against creative puddings, a little of something from everywhere to make it palatable to everyone. This is absolutely not the way to go, in my view. I believe uniqueness is still our distinct advantage. Hollywood has always welcomed outsiders, embracing them as their own, once their films make money, of course. From Erich von Stroheim to Billy Wilder to Ang Lee to the Mexican amigos, my friends Inarritu and Cuarón, and to my own doing Shantaram, we are allowed in once our talent translates into major box office. But what we make of this invitation is the essential question. Do we pander to making chick flicks on Fifth Avenue, or do we turn our uniqueness, our culture, our musicality, our values into our advantage? I believe very, very firmly that it's because my roots are strong that I can fly. I wanted to end with the 4 truths that I know after these years of making films. Every film I make is based solely on these truths, and I wanted to share them with you today. Never treat what you do as a stepping stone to something else. Do it fully and completely, and only at its fullest do you know where it might lead you. Let the heart inform the brain. My one guru in my life is BKS Iyengar. I practice Iyengar yoga pretty much every day. And he taught me this. He said, let the heart inform the brain, prepare and communicate, but at the moment of working, allow inspiration from any quarter, a carpenter, a street child, the light of the moon. Be brave, be creatively brave, and prepare at the same time to be lonely. Cultivate stamina. Beware the fruits of your action. This is the lesson from the Bhagavad Gita that I never forget. Beware the fruits of your action. Serve your work purely and without thinking of reward. In the film world, rewards can come and go, and they can be immense and confusing. And finally, as Paul Klee wrote, because I've become a gardener over the last 18 years, and I find that nature has become an enormous teacher for me, both in the rhythm of how to create cinema, both in the rhythm of how to create laughter and sorrow in cinema. And it comes from these words that Clay wrote long ago. He says, the artist, like the trunk of the tree, is really doing nothing else than accumulate what comes up from the depths and pass it on. He neither serves nor commands. He is an intermediary. It is not the artist who is the beauty of the treetop. Beauty has merely passed through him. I always say there are no rules, really, in making cinema. There is only good cinema or soulless cinema. What is happening in the world lies at the moment just outside the realm of common understanding. The only revenge that I know is to work, is to make cinema that illuminates this common understanding, that destabilizes the dull competence of most of what is produced, that infuses life with idiosyncrasy, with whimsy, with brutality, and like life, that captures the rare but fabulous energy that sometimes can emerge from the juxtaposition of the tragic and the comic. Thank you so much.
First and foremost, I'd like to thank Mr. Puri, Kaveri Bamzai, and the India Today group for inviting me here to speak with you all. It's a matter of great privilege to be on the same dais as a director who is not only a dear friend, but who I consider to be a beacon for Indian cinema, and truly the future of Indian cinema, coupled with a director who I have immense respect for and who does such a wonderful job representing India overseas. So thank you, Karan and Mira, for being such inspiration. Language, lingo, lingua, bhasha, zaban, boli. It's a vast vocabulary out there. And this evening, I could perhaps use a variety of words with tentative punctuation marks or with absolutely no commas, semicolons, whatever. But then, I'm not a practiced player with clever phrases, dialectical notions, and antsy arguments. There's no need for that anyway. I'll just let my thoughts run. Something you may think wasn't part of my faculties. But ladies and gentlemen, I think, I act, therefore I am. And seriously, I think the answer to the question before us, is cinema the new global language, is as self-evident as oxygen is essential for life. So see, it's as easy as falling off a log to assert that, हाँ जी, आज cinema दुनिया की भाषा है. Besides, didn't someone wise and wonderful once state that a picture can say much more than 1,000 words? And pictures or visuals allied to sound, story, performance, technique, all add up to truth 24 frames a second. And that truth is heard from Kashmir to Khan, Kanyakumari to Karlovy Vary. Of course, it's no national secret that I'm a child of cinema. I've been privileged to experience in close-up the limitless reach and the incalculable impact of our cinema, not only at home, but wherever I have traveled and received my education. Doors have opened wider, smiles have been sunnier on people's faces, and communication has been effortless, simply because I belong to the hometown of India's glorious filmmaking community. Indian cinema, that's what the unprejudiced call it, Bollywood, is employed merely by those accustomed to using shortcuts, a word which finally leads no one nowhere in understanding the infinite value and aesthetic of our cinema. Even the most stubborn naysayer cannot deny that our cinema has grown and evolved to such an extent that it's a leading export not only of our economy, but of a culture that is distinctly ours. To be popular, to be relished by the majority of the movie-going audience, here or abroad, is not looked down upon anymore. Those who derided the use of music and highly dramatic content in our film plots, and even the element of the fantasticated as escapist cinema, are now re-evaluating their opinions. Books as well as scholastic studies are now examining how and in what form films have encapsulated the essence of the Indian reality. Needless to add, here's a reality that has universal resonance. We are being increasingly lionized at international film festivals. In return, we salute the work of international cinema at our film festivals. If this is not a dialogue in the language of cinema, I would ask you what is. Indeed, I would like to qualify my thoughts at this point. For someone who's still learning the alphabet of the interconnection between cinema and life, every day is a new lesson. Yet, even with my rawness, I can see that there are some constants which have made us reach where we have, on an equal footing to the rest of the world. Now, because I do not want to tax you and your patience with an endless harangue, I will merely mention 3 of the key constants of our cinema, which reaffirm that we are the world and that our cinema converses globally with articulation and pride, not a shred of prejudice intended. The 3 constants, according to me, and my thoughts aren't even racing anymore, are our immense film heritage. Just take the purely humanistic cinema of Satyajit Ray, which spoke in a forceful language about our people, their anxieties and aspirations. Mr. Ray transmitted our ethos in stark black and white and in color, and was as much our jewel as he was that of the international cinema community. Mrinal Sen, Shyam Benegal, Adur Gopalakrishnan are just but few of the masters of our cinema who have also spoken a universal language. They have been seen, heard, and saluted. As importantly, Raj Kapoor, V. Shantaram, Mehboob Khan, and Bimal Roy created a cinema that inculcated social awareness while using the Indian style of filmmaking, entertaining and purposeful simultaneously. And there have been the grand cinema magicians like, say, Manmohan Desai, whose rollicking Amar Akbar Anthony has been the most delightful yet profound plea for secularism. And surely my first constant would be incomplete without acknowledging the works of internationally fated Shekhar Kapoor, Deepa Mehta, and ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for Ms. Mira Nair. The second constant has been our artists of charisma and strength. Raj Kapoor was and will always be a household name as much in Delhi as he is in Moscow. Dilip Kumar Saab's artistry sets standards which have remained unreachable anywhere. And if I happen to be in Cairo, Indonesia, Hong Kong, Berlin, Australia, New Zealand, New York, anywhere, guess what I'm told? Welcome, welcome, we just love your... I'll let you complete their sentence. Dad is always embarrassed even when he's paid his just dues. You can stop blushing now. The third constant is a new constant, but a very vital one, and one that has come to stay. And this constant is our cinemas connect with Asians settled in every corner of the world. As their numbers grow and the second generation of Asians become key players in everyday lives of the world, particularly in the US and the UK, the umbilical cord with our cinema becomes tighter, unbreakable. In addition, the curiosity and the appreciation of our cinema by the world audience is intensifying. Our movies are no longer just screened at ethnic theaters, but get a mainstream release world over. We've moved from Southall to Leicester Square, from Jackson Heights to the heart of Manhattan. And it doesn't just stop there. Our movies are also being appreciated in countries like France, Germany, and Poland. We are there at the Oscar and the BAFTA ceremonies. We are being imitated in Academy Award movies. I'm sure you've all seen Moulin Rouge. Our filmmakers, artists, writers, musicians, technicians are everywhere engaged in ceaseless conversation, giving rise to a new wave of creativity, and I dare say, a new language to cinema. So see where my thoughts have brought me. Language, lingo, bhasha, zaban, boli. Call the language what you will, ladies and gentlemen, but there are at least 3 words that spark up the same excitement, the same eruption of goose flesh the world over. Those 3 words are lights, camera, and action. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I rest my case. Thank you very much.